Hiya my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Amy and I am a cruelty-free makeup enthusiast. I am so excited about today's video because we are going to talk about palettes I am so happy that I never picked up. I actually did the same exact video about a year ago and I was like, you know what, it's time to do another one. So I have my notes down here, so if you see me kind of look down, that's what I'm looking at. So where I wanted to start off right away is actually with Melt palettes. So I actually really love the whole aesthetic and brand of Melt Cosmetics. I think color story-wise, they come out with such cool and unique color stories, like some of the best color stories probably on the market. And I do have the Muerte palette, which is like this really rich and decadent palette, which is surprisingly one of the easiest Melt palettes that I own. And I have the 27 palette and I have the Gammaray palette, which was what introduced me to Melt Cosmetics. I remember when I saw the teaser photo for those shades, I was like, yes, I have to have it. So I have that one in my collection, but it's a little bit harder to work with. So when other palettes came out, I was definitely tempted, but I'm really glad I never pulled the trigger on any of them. To start off, even before they started making the longer palettes, the stacks that they had. So I remember a lot of cruelty-free bloggers just going crazy about the Melt Rust stack back in the day, and they're like, oh my god, it's great, you have to get it. But I've heard so many people say that those are so hard to blend. They're kind of a nightmare to store because they're round and they kind of like, they're sometimes magnetic, but then if you put them in a drawer, they kind of fall apart and then it would be a nightmare to travel with. So I'm so happy I never got any of those. I mean, some of the colors are so pretty, like She's in Parties I thought was always really nice, or the Baby Girl stack, but you know what? It's just not worth all that hullabaloo, I think. The other palettes that I'm really happy that I never picked up was the Smoke Sessions palette. I'm not like the hugest fan of like putting, I mean, not that I consider like marijuana to be this terrible drug or anything like that. I don't think that at all. But I just think it's weird when it's like all these kind of like recreational drug use on palettes, eyeshadow palettes. It's very strange. So although the colors are pretty, I felt like I didn't need it because I had the Gammaray palette. And also I had heard from so many people that these colors and the pigments were so loosely pressed that the moment you like put your brush into the palette, it just went poof everywhere. Some people had to like press some of the eyeshadows back down because it popped out of the pan, and that just seems like a nightmare that I don't want in my life. Thirdly is the Radioactive palette. That's the bright neon palette, which would be really cool if you want to play with neons, but I heard again that it was very patchy, difficult to blend, and honestly for $48, I don't think it's worth getting a palette like that. And then we have the Impulsive palette. That was the big one. I think it was like 18 or 19 pans, and it closed on itself, and there were shades on either side. So I believe there actually wasn't a cover between those two shades, which kind of like gets my OCD going, just because then you're going to have shades like powder going in from one shade to the next, and most of them were more like metallic. I wouldn't know what to do with these. I look at these shades and I just feel so uninspired, and I just don't know how I would work with it. So maybe that's just me being not a professional makeup artist, but I'm like, The last one, and this one really, I'm really glad I never got this, because I remember when I first saw it, I thought, that's it, I want to buy it, it's so pretty, and it's Melt's Millennial Pink palette. Now, I first saw this palette and I thought it was so cute because I love pink. I love the whole millennial thing because I'm a millennial. You know, most of us are in our 30s now. But I just loved, again, the whole aesthetic of it. I loved like the outside packaging, how simplistic it was. But the more that I sat on it, and I'm really glad I didn't buy it once I saw it. I'm glad I waited because honestly, there's not as many pinks that I would like in it. If they were going to go full-on monochromatic, they should have gone full-on monochromatic, because you only get like 4 pink shades, and then 2 others are like more reddish type of shades, and then you get a white and then like blue. And then the final color is like a charcoal. And so I don't get it. Like I would have really loved to have seen like a really dark, deep pink, all different kinds of pink. Like I'm thinking like Shelby and Steel Magnolias talking about, you know, my colors are blush and bashful. her colors are pink and pink, but there's all different kinds of pink. Or at least, you know, let's get some 50 shades of Pepto-Bismol going on in here. Let's talk about Too Faced palettes now. So there have been a bunch of Too Faced palettes that have come out that I've actually not had too much interest in, and I'm really glad I skipped them. So to start off, back in the holidays, they actually expanded their gingerbread line. They came out with the Extra Spicy palette, and I don't think that this is a bad palette in any way. I'm just glad I didn't pick it up. I do have the original gingerbread palette, which I absolutely love. That came out in Christmas of last year. I still think it's one of the best like holiday releases from a makeup brand. I use it still to this day all the time. For the Extra Spicy, I just felt like I didn't need it because I already have so much warm tone shades. I prefer all the shimmers in the regular gingerbread palette. I think there's more variations of shimmers and colors than the Extra Spicy has. Additionally, I did pick up the Hot Buttered Rum during Christmas this past year. So I feel like those kind of warmer shades that I would have gotten from the Extra Spicy, I got it in the Hot Buttered Rum, but it's in a really nice small compact. And for some reason, the formula in those really tiny compacts are bomb. Let's talk about the Palm Springs Dreams palette. Is this Palm Springs? I've never been to Palm Springs, but if you've been there, can you tell me, like, this is what it is? Like, the inside, are those the colors of Palm Springs? I kind of love the outside packaging of it. You know, it kind of looks like an old hotel from the 70s or even before then, which is kind of cool. But honestly, it's just a neutral palette with a pop of blue. Kind of leans a little bit warmer, I guess, in certain parts of it, but I just feel those shimmers you could probably find in any other Too Faced palette. The Pretty Rich Diamond Light Eyeshadow palette. Upon initial looking at this thing, it looks gorgeous. It comes in one of those giant jewelry box container things. So again, Too Faced really gets you with packaging. But when you really look on the inside of it, again, it's another neutral palette with a pop of blue. I already own like 3 of these. So, and it does have the pressed glitters. I'm not the biggest fan of pressed glitters, but honestly, when I look at my Colourpop So Jaded palette, sometimes I could see the majority of these colors in there if I want like pressed glitter kind of stuff. I, again, look at this and I'm like, it's the packaging. There's really nothing special. There's, you know, a white, a bunch of colors for your crease, and, you know, a typical gold, a typical kind of silver. And a black, a shimmery black, which I'm never the biggest fan of. I prefer matte blacks. Sometimes I'll take a shimmery black, but for $49, lastly, the Watermelon Slice Eye and Face palette. This thing is inspired by watermelon, which I know it's Too Faced things. You know, you get inspired by a bunch of fruit, which I love in fruit-inspired makeup. It's fantastic. But these colors are just so I don't really see a watermelon color in any of this. Like, I see kind of like a peachy pink, but like not a straight watermelon, and it's just so bland. And I've had friends that picked this up and they said it was so bad. So again, I dodged a bullet because it looks cute, and I'm a sucker for really cute packaging. Then I'm like, oh, if it's cute, I gotta add it to my collection. But I'm super excited that I never got this. Next, let's talk about Colourpop. Now, I love Colourpop eyeshadows. You get really good pigment for a fantastic price. Everything blends really nice. I've never had a Colourpop palette that has given me trouble. So, aside from that, there are just a lot of palettes that sometimes I think may be a little bit redundant, or maybe I'm able to dupe them for my own collection that I already have. 2 of their bigger palettes I'm definitely never going to pick up. One is the Bare Necessities, and then the other one is the It's All Good. The thing is that these are actually really pretty palettes. I think they're lovely. I just get, with big palettes, I don't own many. I think I may own 4 at the most, and I'm like, that's good enough for me. When there's just too much to pick from, I start to get a little nervous. I'm like, I don't know what to go with this. Do I go with this slightly lighter one, this slightly darker one, this more warm tone, this cool tone? It's like too many options. The It's All Good kind of reminds me of the Through My Eyes palette from I Love Sarahi when she did that collaboration with Colourpop. I have that palette and I think it's wonderful. And I like that it's down to the 18 shades. It's not too much to think of. I just, again, think that this is just too Like for 30 shades, this is a lot. Like I'm overwhelmed. I think it's pretty, but there's just too much overlap. And especially with the Bare Necessities too, I feel like there's a lot of similar colors in there, and I'm sure that they're different in undertone, but I feel like you could probably cut out half of this palette and have a really good palette. Or if you already have more neutral colors from Colourpop, you probably already have the majority of this palette in a curated form already. When the Flutterby came out, I just thought that was the cutest palette, and plus they put a butterfly on it. And again, adorable. I loved like the mauvey, dusty shades that were in it. Never picked it up. I was like, oh, maybe one day I'll pick it up. And recently they came out with the Making Mauves eyeshadow palette. And I say mauves, and here I'm, okay. A lot of people say mauve, and you're probably right. But the thing is, I think of mauve, like the name Maud with a D. All you're doing is interchanging the D and the V, and we don't say mode. We say Maud. So for me, it makes sense to say mauve. That's what I was raised saying, so that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So they made this Making Mauves palette, which looks a lot like Flutterby, and I'm like, oh, these kind of look the same. And then I thought to myself, I feel like I have mauvey palettes already. From Colourpop, I have the Truly Madly Deeply, which is again kind of a mauvey palette that Colourpop already came out with. It's fantastic. It was so popular that when it was just a Ulta exclusive, they moved it to the Colourpop site as well, so now you can get it there. But then I also thought about my Tarte Love Trust and Fairy Dust palette. That's it. The Love Trust and Fairy Dust palette, and that's also very mauvey too, with a little bit of neutrals included in it. So I said to myself, I don't really need this. I love mauves, but this would be redundant in my collection, so I'm actually glad I never picked these up. In addition to that, the Blush Crush palette I feel like is very similar, has very similar shades to my Truly Madly Deeply palette, so that's why I didn't get that one either. I'm happy I didn't pick it up because again, there would just be too many repetitive shades in my collection. Also, you know what gets me again is the packaging, because the Blush Crush has these beautiful flowers all over it. And I'm like, I want that. And they came out with like a highlighter that goes along with it that's so pretty. And I can't. The next one is killing me to say this because I love this company so much. And that is the Lunatic Cosmetics. This is their brand new palette. This one's called Descendant. What I appreciate about them is that they don't put out product all the time. They really have a cohesive product list, and it's very them. It's very on brand. It's like, you know, kind of gothic-y, dead girl type thing, B-movie Hollywood, which I really appreciate and enjoy. But the thing about this is that it's so boring, and I hate saying that, but honestly, if you have a neutral palette, and I do appreciate that it's kind of a gradient of neutrals, but honestly, this is so boring. I feel like if you have one of their contour palettes, which I do, I think you're good, because you can use the contour palette as eyeshadow. So I'm looking at this, and originally when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, I want to get it because I love them and I want to support them, but it's just so boring. It's just like beige and brown. I'm sorry. Let's talk about Morphe some more. Now, in my last video that I did about palettes I'm glad I didn't pick up, I talked all about pretty much most Morphe stuff. Now, I don't own anything from Morphe. Again, they're like a company that it's like we don't really know if they're cruelty-free. I think they're a very shady company and have very shady business practices. And so I wanted to talk about the Jaclyn Hill Volume 2, though, that came out earlier this year. So again, when I see this palette, it kind of reminds me of that It's All Good palette from Colourpop. Like, they're very similar, but Jaclyn's has a little bit more like orangey and bright pinks to hers. But I look at it again and I go, you know what? And I don't trust Morphe in regards to their formulas. So we found out this year that the first Jaclyn Hill palette was originally labeled vegan for many years, and then they changed it without notifying anyone, and they were still marketing it as vegan after the formula had changed. So it's very strange to me, and I know that this new palette isn't being marketed as such, but I still think it's just very odd, and it's honestly just too many shades. If you want like a lot of shades, for a really good price for a brand that's completely cruelty-free and that we know for sure that's been vetted as cruelty-free. Profusion is fantastic. I have their Mirage palette and it is wonderful quality for something that's $13. And again, it's much cheaper than Morphe, so. And also, I just don't hear anyone talking about Jaclyn Hill's palette anymore. Like, it was such a big deal when it first came out and everyone reviewed it, and it received fairly decent reviews, I feel like. And it's sad because no one's talking about it now. I feel like it was released 2.5 months ago maybe, and I haven't heard anything. Charlotte, darling, what are you doing? These Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palettes, they're all so lovely, but I have to say I'm so happy I never picked any of them up because honestly, although they're very pretty, they're so expensive. Her quads are $53. Now, I get the idea. This is a luxury brand. No doubt about it. Charlotte Tilbury's luxury. There aren't many cruelty-free brands that are luxury. And plus you're paying for that beautiful old Hollywood aesthetic. Everything's very glamorous and chic. Then I think if I did have one of these, would I really be pulled towards them to use them? Quads, I can't say I'm very inspired to play with quads so much. I prefer a little bit of a bigger palette, not a huge palette, but I have to say anything from like 6 pan to about 18 pans, like I feel fairly good about. So I just don't think these are, in my personal opinion, worth the money for me, just because how much use would I really get out of them? The only thing I kind of am drawn to is that Instant Eye palette, which is like all those pinks and stuff. I know I don't need it, but it's really pretty. It's also $75, so that's why I'm happy I haven't picked it up. Another full brand that I want to talk about is actually Kylie Cosmetics, because I feel like Kylie was such a hyped up brand. Everyone would wait, and her palettes and her makeup and her lip kits would just sell out in like minutes, and people lusted over her makeup. And now I feel like since she's kind of taken a step back and sold the majority of her company, I believe, she hasn't really put out anything that I feel like people are like clamoring over, going nuts over. I feel like a lot of people now don't really review her products as much. I mean, I don't know about you, that's how I feel. All her eyeshadow palettes, like no one really talks about them anymore. There have been a few that I thought were kind of cute, but knowing that I think they were made by Colourpop at one point, like they were using Colourpop's lab or something, I just feel like, well, you're gonna kind of get Colourpop formula but for a more expensive price, and her formula is a little bit different, so, and some people say it's not even as good as Colourpop, so that's when I have to ask, is it really worth it? And the only thing I thought was really, really cool was she had a genuine Halloween collection one year, and there was all these really, really cute colors. I can't find a picture of it right now, but I remember thinking that's really cute. But do you see anyone using like her birthday palette? What was it, like her 21st, 18th? I don't, she's pretty young, right? So, but I just don't see, where's the hype? Imagine all this hype, and now, for what? No one's talking about it. Alrighty, my friends, so that is it for today's episode of palettes I'm glad I never picked up. Please share below palettes that you're happy you never picked up, or do you have these palettes and you're really happy that you have them? Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below. I always love chatting with you guys. And until next time, remember to stay compassionate and chic. Bye!